Okay, good morning. Welcome back to day 4. Hopefully the standard check wasn't too bad yesterday. I'm recording this on Wednesday, so I have enough time to upload it tonight for tomorrow. But hopefully I get your grades put into IC by either tonight, so Wednesday night, or hopefully by tomorrow morning, which is when you'll be watching this video, Tuesday morning. No, Thursday morning. Oh, guys, I'm losing my mind. If you want to reassess that standard check, so if you don't think you did well on it, if you want to get a better grade, the way reassessing is going to be from here on out is solely with Khan Academy. That's the easiest way I can see it happening, since I'm not able to physically meet with you guys. So if that's something you want to do, you need to let me know and I can set that up through Khan. But I think for the most part, people did fine on the standard check. I was pretty happy with the results. But starting today, we're going to do something different. We're getting out of just talking about polygons in general, and we're going to get more specific with our quadrilateral unit. So this unit is all about quads, and quadrilaterals, if you don't remember, are four-sided shapes. So four-sided shapes, you might be thinking, oh, squares, rectangles, maybe a kite, maybe some of you like to say a diamond, which is really, we'll talk about that later, what that means. So yeah, we're going to start today specifically with parallelograms. So parallelograms look something like this. And parallelograms are really neat because a lot of the quadrilaterals that you're thinking of are just special types of parallelograms. So parallelograms are really like an overarching thing that can apply to a lot of the probably four-sided shapes you guys are thinking of. So our notes are going to look like these. I've already put them on canvas, hopefully. And some of you are asking for like printed notes. There is a way for me to send that stuff to the office and you would have a parent come pick it up. But if you don't have access to that, I would pause the video right now and try to make your worksheet at home look as much like mine. So you should have at the top of your paper properties of parallelograms, and then a bulleted list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? And then I'm going to try to draw like what 1 through 5 looks like. So right next to where you have number 1, you might have a short little drawing of, oh, if all the sides are congruent, then that looks like this sort of thing. So whatever I draw, I'm going to try to draw it in this section. So maybe you have that set up like, oh, after number 1, here's my picture. After number 2, here's my picture. So just try to keep your notes as organized as possible. This is a great learning experience for how to take notes if you're not given guided notes at home. But the first property of a parallelogram is that opposite sides are parallel, which should be pretty easy to remember because of its name, parallelogram. And what that means are, if we were to continue with the sides, they should go on forever and they would never touch each other. So if I draw, also I'm really bad at drawing parallelograms apparently. If I were to draw this side with this side, these two sides are considered opposite of each other because they're not touching each other. They never should touch. They would be considered parallel. And then if I went with the other two sides that I didn't grab before, if I made them blue, this side and this side, they should never touch because they would be parallel of each other. The second property is going to be opposite sides are congruent. So if I have this parallelogram, maybe your picture, you would just put like the little tick marks to show that the sides are congruent. So those two sides would be opposite of each other, so they would be congruent. And then I would have 2 tick marks for these other sides to show those 2 red tick mark sides are congruent to each other, but they might not be necessarily congruent to the other 2 sides that we marked up in the first one. Property number 3, opposite angles are congruent. So if I take another parallelogram, opposite angles would be considered these blue angles. Those are opposite. Those are going to be congruent. And then if I make 2 yellow angles, those would be congruent to each other. Okay. The 4th property is consecutive. Talk about what consecutive means. Oh, that's a U. Consecutive angles they're not congruent, they're supplementary. Let me rewrite that. Guys, I got my new stylus in today, and it's trash. Okay, that should say supplementary. So consecutive angles are supplementary. So if I took, I'll try to make this a little bit easier. If I took this blue angle and I added it to this red angle, they should add up to 180 degrees. They're considered consecutive angles because it's one right after the other, okay? Same idea if I went with this blue angle and this yellow angle. If I added here and here, that should add up to 180 degrees every single time. Because supplementary means adds up to 180, or if you put the 2 angles together, they would make a straight line. So however you want to remember that, the angle right after each other, or 2 consecutive angles, are supplementary. The last property is a little weird when you hear it at first, but it's not too hard to explain once I draw the picture, are that diagonals bisect each other. So the diagonals are when we go from vertex to vertex, across. Trying to erase this really fast. Oh gosh, that's so bad. There, that's pretty good. So if I went from this vertex to this vertex, that's one diagonal. Then if I go from this vertex to the other vertex, that's the second diagonal. So where these 2 diagonals meet in the middle, that's where they're bisecting each other. So they're creating 2 congruent halves on both of these diagonals, which is kind of cool. So using all of those properties, we're going to find some missing measurements in a bunch of parallelograms below. I'm only going to do the odd problems with you and kind of give you the evens for homework or to do like on your own. Because I do know just listening to me might get really boring after a while. But if you have questions on the evens and just looking at my notes at the very end isn't helpful, let me know. Like, no one asked me any questions about the parallel or the polygon angle sum theorem stuff before the standard check. So you guys not asking me questions is really hard for me to help you because I have no idea what's going on your side of the screen. I have no idea if you guys are understanding or getting confused until you take that standard check, and I don't want that to be the case. If you have issues, like, let me know now before, so we can correct them before you take that standard check. Okay, so if I go down to problem number 1, so whenever I'm looking at these, a little refresher, if I see right here, it says the measure, the little m means measure of angle, and then A, B, and C. And then up here, when it just says the measure, just saying like AD, that means what's the measurement of this side length right here. And then for DC, what's the measure of DC? That would be this side length right here. So finding the side lengths is probably going to be the easiest part right now because of, let me get my lightsaber. Because of opposite sides are always congruent, knowing which side is opposite which is going to make figuring out the side measures pretty easy. So side AD would be opposite side BC. So that means AD should also be 8. Whoops, I put that on CD. So AD is 8. Then side DC is opposite side AB, so that means these two sides should be congruent, so DC is also 15. Okay, now we gotta think about the angle. So let's look back at my properties. In my properties, I know that opposite angles are congruent. So if I look at angle D, the angle opposite of angle D would be angle B. So right away, I should know that angle D and B are congruent. So that means angle B is also 68 degrees. Now, I gotta think about angle A and C. Angle A and C are congruent because they're opposite of each other. So if I figure out one, then I have both of them. All right, let's go down our properties. So opposite sides, opposite sides, opposite sides. Oh, consecutive angles are supplementary. So consecutive angles, that would be like A and D are consecutive angles. So if I know A and D have to add up to 180, I'm going to take 180 and subtract 68. And you should get 112 degrees. So that means angle A and C are 112 degrees because they are opposite. Alright, so moving on to number 3. In number 3, we have some diagonals going on, and it looks like we're not being asked to find any angle measures. They're all just sides. So we're probably going to have to use that 5th property, though, that diagonals bisect each other. Knowing, oh, they tell us that RT is 30, which is helpful. With UT is down here. UT would be opposite of RS, so that means UT also has to be 27. Okay, then ST is opposite RU, so that means ST is 18. Okay, and then we got VS. Okay, now VS is part of this whole diagonal, okay? And I know that UV is 7, so just this part of the diagonal is 7. The diagonals are bisecting each other, so what's happening is that's creating these are congruent with each other, and then these guys are congruent with each other. So if I know that UV is 7, that means that SV also has to be 7. Or VS, however you want to look at it. Okay, then VT, I gotta figure out what VT is. Now I know that RV and VT are congruent. Oh, and then this thing down here, it told me RT is 30. RT is this whole long diagonal. So if I know this whole big diagonal is 30, I'm going to think about splitting that in half, and that's just going to give me VT. So 30 divided by 2, I would get 15 for VT. Alright. Number 5. 5's going to be tricky because I have to actually put in where all this stuff goes. So hopefully I can do this as neatly as possible. I'm going to pause and I'm going to try to mark this up so you're not just watching me mark everything and making a mess. So I think I have everything that I can labeled. I'm going to make this is both of those angles. So this is going to be slightly difficult, I know, because you guys can't see everything I'm pointing to. I'm going to try my best to point and write at the same time. So when I'm finding the side length of ZW, so ZW, that is this side of the parallelogram that's opposite from 15. So ZW also has to be 15. Make sure when you're finding actual sides that you're just finding side lengths and not using angle measures. Okay, these should all be side lengths. These should all be angle measures and degrees. So for ZW, it's 15. Okay. For ZY, ZY would be opposite from WX. So ZY is also going to be 22. Okay, the next few things I probably don't have labeled. I didn't label ZX and WT because it would have gotten way too messy. So for TX, TX is this portion of the diagonal. So that means I'm probably talking about the diagonal ZX. Luckily, ZX is 52. So if I know that the diagonals are bisecting each other, that means it's splitting up ZT to be congruent to TX. So if the whole diagonal is 52, I'm going to take 52 and divide it by 2, and I would get 26. So the diagonal would be the whole thing, and you're going to take that and divide by 2 to get 26. With WT, however, WT is just a side of WY, but if I know that WT is congruent to TY, I'm actually going to multiply 23 by 2, or you could add another 23 because TY should also be 23 because these would be congruent to each other. So then for that whole diagonal, I get 46. And so there's all the side lengths that I need. Now I'm going to be dealing with angle measures. So the angle measure properties that we have to remember are opposite angles are congruent and consecutive angles are supplementary. Now there's also some alternate interior angle stuff going on, because reminder that these sides are all parallel. I'm going to erase these in a second, but these sides are all parallel to each other. And now these diagonals are making some transversals going on, so we might have some interesting ways to prove some of these angles. With angle TZY, so TZY That would be this angle that I'm highlighting. Okay, I know that angle WZY, so the whole angle on this side, this whole thing is 72. I just want this piece of it. I don't want the whole thing. So it's going to be less than 72. Now if I look up here, I know that this part of the parallelogram, that small angle, is 35. So if we think about alternate interior angles, this TZY angle would also have to be 35 degrees. Okay, because these two guys would be congruent. And maybe tomorrow, if people are really confused about that, I can make a better video with a bigger diagram and actually show you where the parallel lines are and where the transversal is. Okay. Let me erase those. Oh, not that. 35 degrees. Next one is, if I think about the angle XYZ. So angle XYZ would be here and there. So this like wide obtuse angle. What is going on? So I know that this angle up here is 59 degrees. And I know that would make this 59 degrees. But I don't know if these two angles right next to each other are congruent. It doesn't say that the diagonals are angle bisectors. It just says that they bisect each other. So if you're thinking, oh, if this is 59, then that also has to be 59. Not quite, okay? Instead, we're going to use that property that consecutive angles are supplementary. So this green angle right here would be consecutive with that angle that I'm trying to find. So I'm going to take 180 and subtract 72 to get whatever this angle would be to be a supplement to 72 degrees. So if I take 180 minus 72, I get 108. So that means angle XYZ is 108 degrees. Alright? Next, I have to erase some of this stuff. I'm going to find angle XWT. So angle XWT, that's right here. So remember we said, oh, like, these aren't necessarily going to be congruent, so just because this angle is 59, that doesn't mean WXYZ or XWT is going to be also 59. So I got to do little different things. However, I now know what this full angle is. I know that this whole angle that I'm highlighting right now is 108 degrees. So that means that this angle also should have to be 108 degrees because they're opposite of each other. So if I take 108 and I subtract what I already know, that 59 degrees, I should just be left with this TWX angle, this like green highlighted angle that I got. Okay, so I'm going to take 108 minus 59, and that's how I get 49 degrees. So angle XWT is 49 degrees. A lot of this is just angle addition and angle subtraction. So you got to make sense of, what does the picture look like? What do I know? what should I add or subtract to make it make sense, to put the puzzle pieces together almost. Alright, let me erase some of this stuff. Okay. Next thing, last thing I have to find for this problem, measure of angle XYT. So angle XYT, that is right here. This one is actually a lot like that first angle we found up here. So if I think about angle XYT, that should be congruent to that angle that I know is 59 degrees. Because, again, of alternate interior angles. So if I extend this parallelogram side, I extend this parallelogram side, I now have two parallel lines cut by a transversal, and these two angles are those alternate interior angles. Okay, so that means this angle is also 59 degrees. Alright, so if you haven't already, try number 2, 3, and 6. Not 2, 3, and 6. 2, 4, and 6. And I'm going to post a picture of those at the very end of this for like an answer key. So yeah, just try 2, 4, and 6, and then I'm going to keep going in a second to the back page. Alright, so I'm on the back page now. I think a lot of these problems will be a lot easier. They're not using all the properties at once. You're pretty much just using one or two at a time. So it might be a little bit less to wrap your brain around at first. So for number 7, I'm solving for x. Really, I'm only told something about this side and this side. But we know that this is a parallelogram, and so that means that both of those sides should be congruent to each other. So the easiest way to solve for x would be to set those sides equal to each other, because they should, in fact, equal each other if they are, in fact, congruent. So I'm going to have 9x minus 25 equals 5x plus 7. And then I'm going to combine my like terms, so I'm going to add 25 to both sides. And then I'm going to have 9x equals 5x plus 33. No, not 33, 32, my bad. Then I'm going to move my x's, so I'm going to subtract 5x. And I get 4x equals 32. Then divide by 4. And x equals 8. Okay, pretty straightforward. If you know two things are equal to each other, set them equal to each other. For number 9, if TV equals 74, so TV would be this diagonal, and I know that VU, just that portion of the diagonal, is 4x plus 1. So I think I said VU, VW and TW should be congruent to each other because they're parts of the diagonal and the diagonals are bisecting each other. So I know if I take VU and I double it, I would have this total of VT. Okay, so I'm going to take 2 times 4x plus 1 and set it equal to, that should equal that whole thing, that whole TV, and I know that TV is 74. So you could either like add this twice, add 4x plus 1 twice, or if I said double it, so that means also multiply by 2. So when I multiply by 2, I'm going to distribute. I would have 8x plus 2 equals 74. Then I would subtract 2 from both sides. I get 8x equals 72. Divide by 8. And x equals 9. Okay. For 11, find the measure of angle B. So angle B is this guy. We're not even told anything about angle B. Kind of rude. But we are told something about angles A and C. Angles A and C are what we call opposite angles of a parallelogram, so I know those two are equal to each other. So let's start off with that. So if I know angle A and C are congruent, I'm going to set them equal to each other. 4x plus 11. And then I can solve for x. So I'm going to add 15. Subtract 4x. And I get x equals 13. So knowing that x equals 13, I can now take what I know x to be and plug it in for angle A or angle C, either one. Because after I know what angle A and C are, then I can use that to figure out what angle B is, because I know that angle A and B are consecutive angles and angle B and C are consecutive angles, so either of the two, whichever one you pick, those have to add up to 180. So if I take angle A plus angle B, it's going to equal 180. If I take angle C plus angle B, it has to equal 180. So let's first figure out what angle A and C are. So if I plug in 13 for x, I'm going to go with angle A. Doesn't matter because they should be the same thing. That means the measure of angle A equals 63 degrees. Okay, so if A is 63 degrees and angle C is 63, that means I have to figure out what plus 63 is adding up to 180. And whatever that what is going to be my angle B. So measure of angle B equals 180 minus 63, which turns out to be 117. So measure of angle B equals 117. That's 114. And there you go. For 13, I have, if the measure, I might need more room for this one, if the measure of KLH, so let's find KLH. KLH is 134. 134. Solve for x. So knowing that angle is 134 is pretty helpful. I also am given information about this angle up here. And remember that we have these things called alternate interior angles. So if I know this red angle is 4x plus 9, that means this angle down here is also going to be 4x plus 9 because they're alternate interior angles. Okay, so make a note of remembering alternate interior angles. So just like I did in problem number 11, I'm going to use that whole consecutive angles are supplementary. So if I take this whole angle H plus angle L, it should add up to 180 degrees. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take 25. That's this guy. plus this red angle that I highlighted, 4x plus 9 plus 134, and that should equal 180. Okay, now I can combine my like terms. So I have 25 plus 9 plus 134. And I get 168 plus 4x equals 180. Then I'm going to subtract 168. 4x equals 12. And so then x equals 3, because 12 divided by 4 equals 3. Alright, that's as much instruction as I have for you guys today. Sorry if this video is a little longer than usual. What I'm going to have next is just a screenshot of the two note sheets. You'll just have to pause the video, record what I have, and check it with what you have. Do not just copy down what I have. That's not helpful. Actually try these problems on your own. If you get stuck, you can send me a picture with the Remind app. You can send me a picture through Canvas. We can set up a video chat, and I can go over the problems with you, like in person, face-to-face. Well, not in person, but face-to-face through a laptop or a Chromebook, and we can figure this stuff out. I just need to hear back from you guys. Also, let me know what you think of these videos. Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Like, I have heard nothing from a lot of you. It's crickets over here, and I'm just dying to hear from some of you on how you're doing and what's going on in your life. I'm always here. Like I said, the best time to reach me is between 7:40 and 3 o'clock. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. Okay, here's page number 1. And then here's page number 2.